Why are people now turning to the advice of AI instead of speaking to each other? So, modern loneliness in midlife can lead you now to seeking out entertainment in other forms. So, if your dating life is not going well, if you've got problems within a relationship, you now have the option of Chat GBT or a similar sort of portal that you can type in your issues, your problems, whatever it may be going on, and you can be given advice that is clear, concise, and non judgmental. I wanted to look at this today in this episode of the podcast because I think it's a really interesting narrative that personally, after myself, I use Chat GBT now for so many things for sports injuries, for help with a podcast, for cooking ideas, all sorts of things. And I think I'm not alone in that. I think everyone does now, rather than as we used to go onto Google, search on Google, it's now using one of these AI engines. And you can actually go on and use it for free, or obviously you can get a better version and subscribe. And all of these versions of AI are there to engage you, to give you enough of an answer, but to keep you asking more and then try and get you eventually to actually buy into receiving a better service. But in terms of dating, now with modern dating and with modern relationships, like we've said before, people aren't willing to settle anymore for being unhappy. They want their best life. I think the days of I'm just going to get through this and do it for the kids and suck it up, they've gone, and in my opinion, rightfully so. Because I think we're realizing, the old adages of I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And I want, we get one life and you need to be enjoying every day. And that's not going to happen if every day you're getting up and you're finding it increasingly difficult to just get through because of the stress and you just realize you're not happy. And I think you get to a certain age after 30 where you start looking at life completely differently. And whether you're in relationships or not in relationships or dating or not interested, I think you start to analyze, where your life is going more than you did in your 20s, because time has no real relevance in your 20s. So modern loneliness can look very different. It can be people that have chosen to be single, they're happy to be single, but there are times when they want someone to say to them, "You look great tonight. Why don't we go out and why don't we just grab a drink?" Or they want someone to give them attention in terms of maybe a kiss, maybe a cuddle, maybe it's someone just to sit down with. And men and women, I think, are very different in this. And we've discussed this a lot. I think for lots of women, it's a lot more about companionship. For lots of men, they still want physical relationships, even as they get older, where women I've found need to have a lot more substance there before they want to enter into a physical relationship. But a lot of the men, they want to find out if there is a physical relationship there first and foremost, where the women are like, I want to get to know you. I want to know, what you're about, what your thoughts are, how you're going to treat me, how you react to situations. And guys aren't always on that page. And that's where there can be a slight mismatch in their communication about what they want out of relationships, and it can be completely different. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with people that just want physical relationships or people that just want companions. Lots of people just want someone to do things with. They're not necessarily interested in a sexual relationship. Most of the guys that I know that are single in midlife, they still want a sexual relationship. That's very high on their agenda. So modern loneliness for men and women can look very different. They can want different things. A man might be at home and just think, I really want to have like a physical relationship with someone because I'm here on my own, where a woman could be at home thinking, I really want someone to talk to. I really want someone to listen to me. And I think one of the posts that I've put out recently, which got a lot of traction, a lot of attention, was who would survive better if we were to stay single from now? Would it be men or would it be women? Overwhelmingly, everyone, and it was all women that said this as well, but everyone said men. Men would struggle more, and I think they're right. I think that's probably true. I think men still want women because they don't want to be on their own. They want to be looked after, and they want a physical relationship. Where women want an emotional connection. They want to be heard. They want to be seen, and they can get that from other women. Where men can't get their physical relationship unless obviously they're gay from other guys as well. So they then find that more difficult to sustain being on their own because that's one of the main things that they're missing. Women miss communication and talking. Even when guys have got that opportunity, their conversations are very simple. When I'm with my friends, our conversations are rarely in depth and they rarely go for more than 4 or 5 seconds before someone's taking the pee out of someone else or making a joke, and you can't help but laugh. It is that way with guys, that's more how they communicate, which I don't think women always do. They're very supportive. They're very um they're very, they've got lots of empathy for each other, and you won't really find that in groups of guys. Maybe if there's one or two of you, then in smaller groups you might do. Lots of people have got to this point, and mainly because of the next reason is like dating fatigue. It's hard bloody work out there when you're dating. I'm not dating anymore, and I haven't been for a couple of years now. But when I was, I could only do it every sort of 7, 8 weeks because it was just, well, financially it was exhausting, and also emotionally it was quite exhausting because it wasn't the going out on the dates. Actually, I enjoyed that bit. I enjoy talking and I enjoy meeting people, but it was getting to that point, and it was laborious. It was so long, and it was the same conversation to get to a certain point, and maybe you wouldn't get to that point anyway. So it could be a waste of your time often because you would have all these messages backwards and forth, and you'd get to do you want to go out? And it was like, well, I can't this week, or, I'm not in the right place at the moment. So you go through a lot of that. It's very much like cold calling. You're knocking on a lot of doors until you even get a bite sometimes that someone wants to do this. So I think dating fatigue for lots of people has led them to seeking, going to AI and asking for advice in situations, whether it be relationships or dating advice. With dating fatigue as well, it just becomes emotionally draining. So you have emotional exhaustion. And this can be from what you've come from or what you're in currently, where you just find yourself, you can't take on any more. It's like the old buckaroo. There only needs one more thing that could be the lightest thing that could just make you kick off and just think, "Oh, I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm carrying way too much here. I'm done. I'm gone. I can't do anymore." And that's really difficult, especially in midlife, because you've got so much more responsibility. And the word baggage is used, which I don't like. I don't like the word baggage. It always feels so, I don't know, detrimental to people. I never liked, when people said to me, because of my son, like, well, you've got baggage. And I think, well, it's not fucking baggage. It's my life, and I like my life. It's something like I carry, wanting to carry. It's not something I think, oh, I've got to drag this around with me for the next like 18 years. It's something that you want. They are responsibilities. And when you're dating in midlife, you have, family responsibility. When you've got kids, you might have an ex-wife, an ex-husband that you still got to have a relationship with. And that's always difficult as well, because if you're trying to see new people, you've got to navigate that with kids and with maybe a husband or a girlfriend or a wife that you've left, that you don't want to get jealous and you don't want to upset them, because then that just completely upsets the equal of the relationship anyway, and you don't need any more stress with that. Yeah, financial responsibilities, especially if you're on your own, because you're brunting everything now. It's not sort of split two ways, or you've got two incomes coming into the house. You're responsible for food, mortgage, cars, insurances, holidays, whatever it may be. So you've got that responsibility as well. And all that can weigh on you, especially when you meet a new partner, because that comes with certain demands, expected demands as well. In a new relationship, people do expect time. They do want you to give them time and to be there for them because, understandably, that's the only way that that relationship will grow. But that can be very difficult because you're not going to be available every weekend, because there may be weekends where you have your kids have other weekends, which is sort of standard practice for most people that are split up from each other and have got kids. So they're not going to tie in, and you may not have a support structure around you where you can actually call on people to look after the kids and it's a weekend. And I don't know about you guys, but I think I did that maybe once or twice for if it was a wedding or something that, obviously couldn't be changed. If when Zach was with me on a weekend, I would never choose to do anything else because my first choice was always to spend that with him the weekend. So anyone else that was coming into my life would have to understand that, which understandably, a lot of the time they didn't. A lot of the time, the women that I was dating were younger than me and they may not have had kids, or so they didn't really understand that dynamic of, I don't get that. Why would you do that? And I think that comes through having kids. You have more understanding of, well, okay, I get that you can't do every other weekend. So it is important. And all of that can be just emotionally exhausting sometimes, where someone else coming in, making more demands of you, you just get to the stage where something's going to have to give here. And, I'm not giving any anything up that I've already got. So it's going to be the person I'm dating, that new relationship. So that requires a hell of a lot of understanding. And you may be the one that's been asked to have that understanding. And you might be finding that emotionally exhausting as well, because it is. Well, and we've already said about, the use of AI in terms of how men and women communicate differently. So how people put questions to AI will probably differ as well. Men will be very blunt with it. Women will give it a lot more information. Um, and we're going to look at that later on in this episode as well. A lot of this is also about validation. It's feeling validated for your opinions and your thoughts and your reasons. You want someone to not judge you but validate you. And it's not a case of going, you know what, you're right, he is a wally, or yeah, she's out of order. It's not that. It gives you sometimes answers that aren't judgmental. They're not biased. They're not based upon, AI knows you. It will know the more you use it about you, obviously. But it's not sort of, it's not worried about upsetting you. It's not gonna not tell you something that you need to hear because, you might take offense to it. So it gives you that validation for people when they use that we don't always, guys don't get validation from each other, very seldom, and women do that a lot, but sometimes it's probably not in the right way because it's not an honest opinion, because you're supporting your girl, so you're gonna have their back, you're gonna be behind them. But sometimes it's maybe the best advice is to give them is truthful. But as we've said, people don't always want the truth, do they? I think also there's fear of rejection in dating and talking to people, which you never get rejected by AI. You never have that. It's never someone that doesn't want to talk to you or someone that's got their own problems going on. It's always there to give you advice, and it's always there to, say to you, this is what you need to do, and have you thought about this? And here's an idea that might appeal to you. So it's always giving you the choices of what you want to do, which may not always be the case when we're asking, friends, relatives, whatever it may be, that, we might feel some rejection in their answers. So you don't have that with AI. So, why do people feel emotionally safer when they're using online or, AI? And I think a lot of that is they're not judged. No one's judging you. You can literally, without fear of, talking to someone that's going to have a conversation with someone else. That's another reason. You know that this is well, I say, it's completely confidential. I'm not a tech guy, but for all intents and purposes, you kind of know that you can be honest with this and not be judged. You're not going to be judged by AI, and that's going to be safe. It's not like telling someone that, after you've told them, you think, oh, that was a mistake, because they're going to tell another four people, and they're now all going to know what's going on, and then it gets slightly changed, and people don't actually tell each other what you've told them word for word. It's Chinese whispers. It slightly changes, and then that can give you a load more problems that you really don't need. So a lot of the time, I think that's why people feel safer with it. They can be honest. They're not going to be judged. It's going to give them attention, and it's going to be there for them whenever they want it to. 4 o'clock in the morning, it's there. When going to the train to work, it's there. And it's confidential, and it can be almost a subconscious voice for you. So I thought it'd be interesting actually to ask ChatGPT about midlife dating. And so my question was to it, that we're going to discuss for the rest of the podcast: what advice would you give someone that was single looking to date in midlife? And it said, this was its reply. It said, if someone in midlife asked for dating advice now, I'd probably say, stop treating dating like a rescue mission. Stop trying to win at dating. Stop chasing intensity. Start paying attention to peace, consistency, and emotional availability. And I thought these were really interesting, actually. Lots of these, I think guys are still trying to win at dating. They're still trying to get the girl. They're still looking for that girl in their arm that is going to validate them. And they still want everything that they probably wanted when they were 25. And for lots of them, guys, they are chasing that intensity. I know I did, and I'm not ashamed of that. I wanted intensity in a relationship when I had a relationship, and I want intensity in my relationship now. I don't see intensity as a bad thing. I see intensity as, you want to be excited. I still want to be excited in my relationship. I still want to feel like I did the first time, and that's hard to sustain. Completely, I get that. And then it says about the start of paying attention to peace. Now, for me, the peace is like lack of drama. I think that's the peace for most people. When we sort of talk about finding peace, it's not about quiet as such. It is about just calm. And consistency is a big thing as well. And I think finding your consistency, and I think everyone's consistency is very different. What consistent for me is someone that's going to reply to messages when I send them messages, because that's how I am. I'll always reply to messages when I get them. We all know people that are a nightmare on their phones at replying to messages, and you'll see them read it, and then you won't get a reply back for 2 or 3 hours. That drives me nuts. I remember in a relationship that I had not so long ago, I was told, we're not 10. That's what she told me. She went, we're not 10. We don't have to do that. And the first time I heard that, I thought, geez, she's right. We're not 10. And then the longer it went on, and the more it just frustrated me, annoyed me, I thought, you're right, we're not 10. We're bloody adults. So if you see a message, reply to it. It's not that hard, because you're replying to other people, obviously, or sending messages to other people. So why have I come so far down on your priority list? You've seen a message from me, reply to it. And that's not a right answer or a wrong answer. That's just different people's consistency. Her consistency was someone else doing the same to her. They'll reply 5 hours later, and, that's fine for you because you do it as well. For me, it's not fine. So everyone's consistency is very different. So I think that's a very good point. Emotional availability, I think that's thrown around a hell of a lot now, like a lot of words. I think it just means that you've actually got to be ready to throw yourself into something. What I have found as well, I was always ready to throw myself into something that I wanted to. I think people use they're not emotionally available when they don't want to throw themselves into something. And it is a get out now. I think sometimes if girls are dating you, let's say, and they give you the line of, I just don't think I'm emotionally available, Elliot. I usually saw that as like, yeah, I'm just not that into you now, So I've got, I want to do something else. I'm speaking to someone else already online, or I've met another guy when I was out the other day. I want to see what that's like. And we all want honesty, but sometimes we don't always want to hear it. So, I think sometimes emotional availability can just be about where the person is at that time, and emotional availability is about their emotional availability for you. They'll be emotional available for someone else, but they're just not emotionally available for you. So basically, what that means is, yeah, they're just not interested. Um, he then went on to say that a lot of people in midlife are dating while they're exhausted, carrying trauma, carrying divorce wounds, financially stressed, insecure about aging, scared of wasting time, and terrified of rejection. That actually pretty much sums up my perfect woman. All those things. That's what I'd put into a dating app that I'm looking for. And I think, all of us can say that. A lot of all of us are those things. We're exhausted from dating in midlife sometimes. We're all carrying trauma of some descript from something or other in our life, I guess, whether that's something that we recognize that's recent, or maybe something that we don't, we're not even aware about, even aware of ourselves, because it happened in our childhood, and it just, because it might have affected the way that we think, the way that we see relationships, the way that we give love, the way that we receive love. Carrying divorce wounds, I think that's common. I've never been divorced, but from speaking to people that are, there are a lot of things that you might recognize as these warnings, red flags, whatever it is that you want to call them. And you sometimes see those way too quickly in relationships and in people, when actually they're not there. You could be judging them for something that you see a sign of, and it could just be something that's not that big, but you think it is when it's not. And you're thinking, oh God, I've seen this before. I didn't like this before. I'm out. Whereas it may just be something that was a brief one-off, but your defense system kicks in so much that you want to avoid it completely. So I think, those divorce wounds, financially stressed as well, I think that ties up with being single and being on your own. Especially for guys are still expected to pay for dates. And I know that lots of women out there are very good at saying, I'll get this whole pay in dating. There is still, from a lot of women, the expectation that the men are still going to pay, that they're going to look after them. And if they don't, that is something that they recognise, and that's not all women, but that is a lot of women. And I'm also told this from women as well, that they know that their friends do that on dating apps. They're not interested in guys, but they'll go out in the week because it's a meal, it's a free drink, and then they'll go home because they don't have to pay for it, because the guy will pick up the tab, and they might have a few texts, and then they'll just tell them that probably they're emotionally unavailable, and then then the merry-go goes on, the merry-round carries on. Insecure about aging. I think we all do that to a certain degree. We try and look after ourselves. Now I think people, especially women, more so men, but I think women are having Botox, whatever it may be, far younger in life than they need to, because probably more of as a preventive, I would imagine. But I think we're all worried about our aging. And I don't think it's aging. I think it's how we look to other people. We we want to look our best, and we don't look like we did when we're 25. So we're aware that there might be a sell by date on us, and we need to meet someone before the cracks start to appear and get wider. Um, and then we can't do the things that we want to do. I think especially for guys, they're also, as they get older, they're worried about their sexual performance as well. In terms of, can they still sustain what they did in their these early 50s? And obviously they can get help with that as well now. So but I think that's insecure. I think for women, it's more about looks. For guys, I think it's more about, how they are as a person, and can they still get a girl? Are they still attractive to the opposite sex? It's scared of wasting time. We're all scared of wasting time. No one wants to invest time into people that is not going to go anywhere. But that's the gamble. You've got no choice with that. What are you going to do? Just cut your losses really quick, get out of there, because you could be letting things go that might actually go somewhere. So, although we're all scared of wasting time because we've not got as much as we may have thought we used to, it's inevitable. You've got to invest time into people. And terrified of rejection. I'm not so sure about that. I think as we get older, we become a lot more secure and confident in ourselves, and we know ourselves a lot better, especially if you've been single for a while. I think rejection hurts, but it hurts less, and you deal with it far quicker. It's always a bit of a blow, but it's like, okay, all right, fair enough. I'm not going to be for everyone. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, so I move on. Whereas you might have thought about it longer when you was younger. So AI reckons that modern dating is less about do I like this person and more about can this person hurt me. I disagree with that. I think it's all about do I like this person first. I think you only start worrying about is this person going to hurt me when you become vulnerable, and that's usually when you start liking them. He then goes on to say that he thinks one of the biggest problems now is people are trying to avoid paying more than build connection, which is a really interesting point. And he goes on to say that's why they ghost quickly. They like to keep their options open. They avoid vulnerability. They talk to multiple people. They become emotionally detached very quickly. And they use AI online validation because it feels safer. And I think all those things are true. And the next bit I absolutely love. And I think it sums what maybe women are looking for or what they want men to be. It says, and this is why I'm wondering if AI is actually a woman. It says, AI won't reject you. AI replies instantly. AI validates you. AI listens. And AI remembers things. And I think that's great. I think that completely sums up where men are lacking, and AI probably will replace us one day for women. So for a lot of people, that's a lot easier than dating. And it's not that AI is replacing relationships as such, but what does it say about modern dating that people feel emotionally safer about talking to AI? Is AI the new therapy? Are therapists now, going to be redundant because people are no longer sort of going to pay to see a person? They can do this online, pick up their phone, laptop, wherever it may be, and just get feedback instantly wherever they want. Other people are always going to want to see a person in general. I get that. Is That's the real conversation, I think, is why are we emotionally safer talking to AI? I think for me, I think, I use it a lot for sports injuries and rehabilitation for myself. And I think the reason that I like it, and whether this goes across the board with relationships, it's unbiased. It's not going to pull any punches. It's going to tell you exactly what's what. You know, should you do this? Yes. Or it will say, no, you shouldn't do that. But what you should do is X, Y, and Z first to get into that. The other thing that he went on to tell me, AI, about midlife dating was, and this is probably AI's like view of us all dating in midlife. And again, it did stop me because it said people need to stop pretending they're 25. At 25, excitement was enough, attraction was enough, and chemistry was enough. At 45, people are looking at peace, consistency, emotional safety, lifestyle fit, communication, and reliability. And it said that's why a lot of people in midlife struggle on apps, because the apps are built around, and this is what we said in last week's podcast, appearance, novelty, dopamine, and attention. And that's what the apps drive. You know, like I said last week, the first thing on apps is appearance. I don't care what you write in your biography. the first thing people judge you on is the first thing they see, and that's you. It is a novelty when you first go on dating apps because it's like, well, I'm getting all this attention. This is great. And there is that dopamine hit of like, someone's like me and they're really hot. This looks good. Um, and you're getting attention. If you're not getting attention and you put your photo on an app, and all of a sudden 6 or 7 guys or 6 or 7 girls all like you, it does sort of make you go, oh, maybe, maybe I've got something still. Maybe I've still got something to offer. So that's the thing about the online dating. But I can't help but look at this and just think this is like the at 25 thing is more about men when they're dating. And I'm, when it said excitement was enough, attraction was enough, chemistry was enough, I would still want those things in midlife dating. If, and I know guys that are my age, or in midlife, they still want those things. They still want the excitement and the attraction and the chemistry, but it's that's not just what they want. They want reliability, communication. I think lifestyle fits a massive one when you're dating relationships in midlife. Is you've got to have enough common interest to do together, but enough common interest where you're not always together. So you've always got that independence still. So you can always go off and do your own things, but also have things that that you do together. Communication a massive thing as well, obviously. I think the way that you communicate with people is everything. And again, like we said before, that's not a one size fits all. That is unique to people, how they communicate. And it's finding a match for what you want. It's finding a match for your style of communication, someone that communicates with you how you want to communicate, and someone that you communicate with them as well. So it's about matching up. And it says that the last thing that midlife relationships usually survive, and this is interesting because of emotional maturity, calmness, and I think that's like I would put calmness, like I said before, down as just like a lack of drama or enough drama that suits the person. Partnership, just working together, and trust. You need to be able to trust someone enough, but you need to not trust them completely where you're still going to try, and that's important. You've always got to be that. I think you've always got to have that. I need to stay on my toes here because if I take my eye off the ball, she can go somewhere else, or his head might get turned. So I think that's not a bad thing to have, where you trust that person, but there's always that little bit that is like, I trust them completely, but I need to make sure that I'm on my game because otherwise this might, this may not continue, and you don't want to let any sort of cracks start to appear. And it said that, it's worth looking at that people say that they want honesty until honesty removes them as an option. Okay, so what that means is that like a guy will say to a girl, look, just tell me if you've met someone else. That's all I want to know. Now, if that girl turns around and goes, yeah, I've met someone else, cold stone, straight to his face, yeah, I've met someone else. Then the guy thinks, "Oh, I don't want you to be that honest because now now I've got no options, but I'm obviously not going to go any further with you. So people want honesty as long as they're going to get, the answer they want at the end of it. It's the same as if, a woman would be like, tell me why. You know, is it because I'm not attractive to you anymore? If the guy just went, yeah, that's exactly what it is. I just don't find you attractive. He could be being completely honest, but in that story, that guy is the villain. And he's just being honest. So sometimes, we want honesty as long as it doesn't remove us or hurt us in that option. Loneliness and standards are colliding in dating in midlife, and some people are lonely, but they're still unwilling to compromise on anything. I don't think that's a bad thing. Others are compromising too much because they don't want to be alone. So it's like, I don't care if he's got a load of red flags or she's a load of red flags. I'm grabbing hold of them because I'm not going, I'm not going to be in my 70s and still be on my own. I want to be with someone. So I don't care what they're like. I'm going to go with them. Where other people, they're happy on their own. So, and I get this because I think I fall into this was that, well, I was happy on my own. So I'm not going to settle unless it's everything I want, and I think you've got to be able to put up with the things that you don't like. I think that some people, and we've all done this, you can find something you don't like really cute that you in someone else you just find it annoying. And there's lots of things you can find. Oh, she does that thing and it's really cute. And if another girl did it, you think, oh God, that drives me up the wall. So I think it depends upon the people. And midlife, listen, midlife dating, as it says here, is heavily shaped by our previous pain. And you're not dating fresh people anymore. You're dating divorce, betrayal, grief, abandonment, failed marriages, insecurities, parental responsibilities, financial stress, and emotional exhaustion. And that just about sums me up in one hit there. So all this conversation becomes a lot more deeper than why didn't they text me back? And all these things that, we are, if you think about it, like AI has told me here that, you're not dating like new people. You're dating people that have come out of a divorce, that have been cheated on, that have lost someone dear to them, that, have been abandoned by someone that, they never knew why, or they've been in a failed marriage, or they've insecurities about their looks, their weight, their height, whatever it may be. And they can only go out once every 7 weeks because they're parent responsibilities. And, if they do come out, they can't pay for anything because they're paying their mortgage and, they've got to put food on the table for their kids and they've got no more extra money. And all of this is just emotional exhaustion. So that's what we're dating when we date people. And we don't see this when we're on dating apps because all you see is a picture and you go, he looks nice. But, I'm not there going, okay, I've come out of a failed marriage. She cheated on me. I'm still carrying that around with me. I've got no money, so we ain't going out. I'm a bit, suspect about my weight and my height now, and I think I'm losing my hair. I've got my kids on a Wednesday night and a Sunday night. And apart from that, I was in a previous failed marriage before. So this is my third time around. So date me. We don't get that truth. We don't get that honesty. And people aren't honest about themselves. But if I was writing this into AI about, what I should do, I would be honest with it. If right, this is my story. What should I do? How should I put myself across? You know, I think with all of this, I think, if we had the choice of, and I've said this on podcasts before, that if there was your perfect AI partner that looked like a man or a woman and felt like a man or a woman and gave you everything that you want, in conversation, a physical way, whatever it may be, would you opt for that rather than putting up with a person that's got all this behind them? Because that person that you had in the cupboard that you could turn on and put back in the cupboard when they drove you nuts, hopefully, despite the horror films where they go around killing you all the time, but they're not judging you and they're literally there for you. You're not going to hurt their feelings. You're not going to say the wrong things. Would that be an option for people at some stage? And would they take it? That'd be an interesting thought, maybe to the future. But listen, guys, thank you for joining 50 Shades in Grey. Really appreciate you following us. We've got to a really good place on Spotify and YouTube now, but want to keep pushing. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow, please, and give me your feedback. And make sure you follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and all your socials. And we'll speak soon. Take care, guys. Bye bye.